Hey folks, welcome back to Flat Irons Tuning. I'm here in my 2003 WRX, and if you watched the last installment, well, you know that there's a lot of things we have to do to this car, and we're going to do that. We're going to dive into it, but before we do, I want to kind of show you one of the things that we're up against. Before we dive into it, just want to say, if you like the content that we're putting out, if you like what we're doing, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel, and head over to Flat Irons Tuning for all of your parts needs, anything that we have there that you might need. That business goes a long way to making it so that we can keep coming back and making these videos for you. Okay, so in the last installment, one of the things that we saw is that my catch cans were full. Now that's probably on me. I probably, certainly I did not empty them regularly enough, so we know that. Now one of the things I've been noticing in driving this car is that my crankcase pressure was increasing slightly as I got under boost. Like the more boost I got into, the more it went up. And when I first put the catch cans on, they would go actually into vacuum when I got into peak boost. So what I'm going to try and do is I want to show you what I'm looking at. Now remember that my boost gauge on this car is actually a crankcase pressure gauge. So I'm just going to give it the beans here. All right, so I've got another GoPro pointed right at that, and so we're going to give it the beans. So it's just increasing slightly. It's better, but it's not as good as what I would want it to be under boost. And so then the question is, now that we've cleaned out the catch cans, let me do it one more time. All right. So the question is this? Well, what is the cause of this? We don't exactly know. Now the catch cans are clean. Certainly them being full is not the cause. Could there be gunk and stuff in the lines? Absolutely. Could it be something else? Sure. We don't know. We've got to dive into that. So that's one of the big things that we have to figure out, but we have a plan. So we're going to dive into that now. Car is on the lift. Part 2 is about to commence, and here is the plan. So catch cans. Actually, you know what? Even before catch cans, let's kind of go through the top line list. So we need to switch out brake pads and bleed the brakes. That's going to be on the agenda here pretty quick. We need to switch out wheels and tires. That's easy. That goes on after the brakes are bled. That'll come tomorrow. We got to finish the smoke test. We've got an O-ring coming for this guy because nothing that we could find worked. Found the factory bypass valve, so we're going to replace that. Try and get this all buttoned up and make sure that it's going to pass the smoke test, make sure we don't have any leaks. Fun. Wow. Now, catch cans. Basically, for what we're doing at the track, it's not mechanical testing. It's not something where I'm going to have a lot of time, or do I want to be working on the car a lot and chasing a potential issue with the catch cans or the breather setup or anything like that. Really what we need this car, for what we're doing with it, we need it to drive. We need to be able to just get in and drive it and not have to worry about it. So that's the point of going through it to all this level. So the solution, the plan, if you will, is an IAG Air Oil Separator and a 3MI AOS Drain Hose. This gives us an opportunity to answer two questions that we get quite a lot, which is first, can you put an IAG AOS on a 2-liter WRX on a Bugeye, even though this is a 2.5 liter? And the answer is yes, and so we can go through that. And then you guys have wanted to see more details about how to install the 3MI AOS Drain Hose. Perfect opportunity for both. So here we go. The goal here is going to be that we get the IAG AOS installed, and then that makes it so that the car is going to be reliable, get it to the point where we can just drive it and do what we need to do with it. That is the goal, and then I don't know, we'll see where the chips fall from there. Wheel bearing and alignment are the other ones. So discovered we have a bad wheel bearing. So that's going to get fixed. We're going to get the car aligned, but we've got to get all this mechanical stuff done so that we can get it to the shop that's going to align it next week. So fun stuff. All right, so let's dive into it. Let's get going. All right, so we're underway with the install of the Air Oil Separator here on the Bugeye. So let's first talk about why IAG doesn't list one of their air oil separators for the 2002 to 2005 to 2-liter WRXs. Basically, it has to do with the cruise control system because these are drive-by cable cars, and the cruise control normally sits right there. It's a big box where the air oil separator sits. Now, if you get on IAG's site and you look at their FAQs and whatnot, this is a question that they have answered, and they go into detail about the modifications that you need to do to modify the cruise control bracket so that you can fit their air oil separator and the cruise control. Now, I've removed my cruise control way back when, and so it's not a problem. So it does fit up. Now, the other key difference, especially in the early WRXs, the 2002, 2003s, is that your PCV valve in these cars, the early ones, actually threads in and into the intake manifold. It looks like this. Put that up so you can see it. So this threads into the intake manifold, and this is the check valve. I don't know if you can hear that. That's the check valve for the PCV system. Now, everything else puts it in the PCV tree that sits on top of the factory AOS. So when you're installing the IAG AOS, you have to put on just a straight fitting. That is the part number. This is another one of their FAQs. It's on their website as well. But this is what you need to then thread into the intake manifold right under the throttle body, which I have no idea if you're going to be able to see, but I'll try and show you. Basically goes right down in there. So basically, and the reason that you do that is because they use their own check valve in their line. So this is the line for the PCV valve. I think it's like 5/8 to 1/2 inch or something like that. But this thing right here, that's the PCV check valve. And then this connects to the top of the air oil separator. So you need to basically remove the factory check valve and just replace it with the IAG one. So, and I'll put links. Well, they made it hard. I don't think you can actually link to it, but if you search on their support page on IAG site, they walk you through all of this. Now, the other wrinkle here is that we're installing the 3MI drain hose. So I've got the air oil separator in place, and I've got the coolant lines connected, but this third fitting here, the drain, I've not connected because I've got to use the 3MI drain hose instead. And so I've got to figure out how to basically move their push lock fitting over to the 3MI hose after it's cut to length. So the next challenge here is going to be basically getting the 3MI drain hose on. And we're going to try and lift up the turbo to basically put on the drain hose. And then once the 3MI drain hose is in place, then we can finish connecting everything. Now, because of this, there is one other difference. But you know, I'm going to go up to the display block up front to show you because it'll be easier to see up there. And what we're going to be looking at is this fitting right here. This is a 3/4 inch fitting that's on the top back of the block. So the bell housing goes this way. That's the transmission, front of the engine. This is the top of the factory air oil separator. So that's where the separator plate would go on the back of the engine. So this is that fitting. Now IAG supplies this hose, which replaces or goes in place of the PCV tree. So the factory hose is basically comes up to a Y, goes over to the PCV valve and your intake manifold over here, and then this side comes up and goes into the turbo inlet. Now, IAG supplies their Y fitting that would go in here, and if you're doing a standard install, this is going to be your drain, and this is going to be a vent that goes up and connects to the breather part of the can. So again, this is where the drain would be, and it sits on top here, and you'd have to run your drain over to that. Now, because we're running the 3MI drain hose, we do not need this fitting. All we need is a way to adapt this 3/4 inch to a 1/2 inch, and that's why that's what uses the 3MI IAG adapter. So this then goes in here, and this just goes up and just attaches to the breather side of the can. That's it. So the drain is we're going to discard the drain hose that comes with the IAG system. We're going to replace that with the 3MI drain hose, and then we're going to use this for the breather fitting, just the same as what you would use on the top fitting here from IAG. It's just we don't need the drain. So that's it. But I did want to show you, so that right there, that is where the top of the factory AOS is. That's where that hose goes. And so that's where the breather is going to come up and connect to one of the fittings on one of the breather fittings on the side of the can there. Things are progressing. The turbo is now off. Pretty much, I think if you're going to install a 3-mi drain hose, you really are going to want to plan on removing the turbo, because you're going to need that real estate to be able to run the hose. Because if you try and sneak it around, basically the oil return is right there. You're going to have to run the hose over to the AOS. Your best bet is to just take the turbo off so you got some room to work. So then, that's your factory drain hose. So the 3-mi drain hose has this marking right here, which is basically a little bit longer than the factory drain hose. So that's where we're going to cut this, so we can put the 3-mi drain hose on in place of this guy, and then the drain will merge in with it. The other side, alongside this, is going to run over to the drain of the AOS. Then we have to figure out how to get the compression fitting on that. So that's the next chore. If you have to cut a silicone hose and you want to get as straight of a line as possible, but you don't have a fancy set of cutters to it, top tip is to take some kind of a clamp, put the clamp where you want to cut, take a sharp razor blade, basically use the clamp as your guide, kind of work through the hose, and you should end up with a pretty straight cut, though this of course is not exemplifying that. This will also prevent you from cutting too much. Reasonably straight. Your results may vary, but I like using the guide. I live my life a quarter turn at a time.
He's in his happy place.
A happy place, yeah. Oh no. Oh no.
Oh, he's stuck. He went too far.
Went too far.
He went too
I got in the groove.
Yeah.
I got in the groove, and now there's no going back.
Enhance. Enhance. Enhance.
Oil drain hose from IAG. We're not gonna use it. Now, because we're using the push lock system, you're going to have to get the push lock out of the hose, which means you're gonna have to cut the band off. I used a Dremel, but then even after that, it was still really stuck into the hose, so I had to use a blade to cut it off. You've got to be really, really careful, because you don't want to leave a crease or a cut into the actual barb fitting, because that can cause a leak. So once you get this out, then you're going to have to come over to your air oil separator. You got the drain bung loose, and then we basically put this on. Got a measurement for the hose, cut the hose. Notice how straight that is. Finally did one right. And then now we're gonna have to put this barb in this hose, clamp it, and then that's gonna be our drain. So the drain is gonna come from the bottom of the hose down to the turbo oil return. Carter, if you can get down there and try and light it. So you can see, so the oil return is now stabbed. It's on there. Now we get the turbo, have to get the turbo back on there. I would say if you're gonna do this, you need to be prepared to take off the driver's side turbo bracket. It looks really easy because both of these bolts are right up on top, but there's this third little guy that bolts into the transmit, or actually to the sharp block, that is not easy to get to because of all the stuff that's in the way. So the reason we have to get this off is because we tried not to remove this, but we could not get the hose to rotate and pop up underneath this, and we're probably going to need more clearance here. So we're going to have to cut this off, and then probably open this up to give the hose more space, and then this will be the remaining hold for the turbo. That's where we're at. That's next. There's a storm coming in, so we got to get right to it. After some very light modification, this is now what the turbo support bracket looks like for the driver's side. So basically remove the little piece down here. So now we've got room underneath for the drain hose, and looks like it should fit pretty nice. And heat shielding. Don't forget your heat shielding. or you'll be sad. Well, now you got to get the turbo back on. There's all sorts of clips and hoses, and now we've got to get the drain to line up as it's going back in. This is where the magic happens, as they say. You ready?
We got the header button, will do it for us. Oh?
You guys aren't putting an electric motor in this thing, are you?
Yes.
Oh,
Okay, I'm gonna have to intervene then.
Is that going in?
Oh, yeah, you're on
Step
top of it
away
right now.
from the vehicle.
Now we got to get it into the
Step away from the
turbo
vehicle and
inlet?
no one get us the
I just don't like the pointy one more.
I realized as we were getting ready to put the legs on the octopus here, it would probably be a good idea to actually lay everything out, go through the directions, kind of place all of the hoses as they're supposed to be, and make sure that I've got everything the right length in the right spot, all that. There's a couple of these that are like there's no way to mistake. So like the top fitting here is the one that has to have the PCV check valve, so that goes there. There's no question about that. The longest hose has to come over here to the driver's side valve cover. That goes there. There's no question about that. The other side valve cover, they have it routed around this direction. No question about that. And then the thicker hose is the top of the breather. No question about that. So it leaves me these two hoses, and I think it could be because I've got an old Samco turbo inlet hose, which has maybe some different fittings over here or whatnot, but so it leaves me with this hose that I'm going to be able to make work because I was using a pigtail of the factory hose there to connect up to the hard line on the intercoolers, and maybe that's what this was originally designed for. I'm not sure, but I'm left with a conundrum of how to connect to this rear port on the turbo inlet, and this is of course the most critical port because this is the one where you get the most vacuum to scavenge the crankcase pressure with AOS. So yeah, basically, doing something a little different like this, and just is a good strategy when you're doing these installs, is lay everything out before you cut anything. Because if I would have just started grabbing hoses, I could have very quickly, or maybe I would have ended up in the same situation that I am now, but I wouldn't have known that I was going to get to a point where, this hose doesn't reach or it doesn't fit or something like that. So I'm going to kind of go one at a time, lay them all out here. It's also going to be a really big party right here over the turbo, the compressor housing, which just kind of is what it is because these coolant lines, one of them's got to go down there. I've got to get the lines for the boost control solenoid in there too. Like there's going to be a whole mess of stuff here, and the intercooler is going to sit basically like right about here. So I'm a touch worried about how much is going to have to squish underneath the intercooler, but all right, let's connect some of these things. Again, the party right here is presenting some interesting problems. The biggest one is this hose for the block breather. So take a look at this. Let's see if I can show you here. From the side, it's basically folded over because it's coming up straight. So this hose is completely pinched. When you're installing these hoses, this is what you've got to. It doesn't work. Once that hose is collapsed, there's no air that's going to pass through it. So even if I connect this, the top of the block is not going to breathe. So that's going to severely limit the block's ability to breathe. So have to come up with a different solution. New plan H at this point, 90-degree bend. So Roger Clark makes a 90-degree bend, and we mentioned that, but we're out of them, and I realized like trying to go straight over the top of the turbo is probably just not happening. So I found one at our local hardware store, but they didn't have the adapter to step down, so I had to basically do it in 2 segments. Not ideal, but hopefully it gets this thing working, and it's just now, to seal the breather off, so should be okay. Now I just have to see if I can get it on the block. Everything is now connected and this is pretty much where we have run everything for now. I think this is as close to final as it's going to be, as long as I can get the intercooler on, because obviously that's not here yet. That is the last piece of the puzzle. So the coolant lines are all attached. All the PCV lines are reattached. Realized that I had modified this factory hose that IAG had set up to use, but then they had a 90 here. I have no idea why. So I took that out, changed it to a straight fitting. Got this fitting into my turbo inlet. I think that's going to work reasonably well. I mean, I like it enough. This guy is just, the hose clamps keep the hose from collapsing. This is fuel injection hose, and it just, like with a hard enough bend, it seems to want to collapse, but this is working well enough. I can say, let's call it good for the moment. Whew. Now, put the intercooler on, fingers crossed, that goes okay. Then we can actually put coolant in this thing, start it up, and kind of just see where we're at, and then get back to, hey, you know, the burping of coolant and the smoke test. It seems like you just can't escape those things. But that is next on the agenda. So I will mention a top tip. If you're going to put your STI intercooler on, it is easier to do it if you loosen these two nuts that hold the driver's side radiator stay, or intercooler stay, so that'll drop down, gives you a little bit more play. Everything is back in. Now let's start up and see. There's now a weep valve on the top of the IAG AOS, so you can bleed some of the coolant out there because that's a high point. So that's good, but so I'm gonna start the car up and see what happens.
Yeah.
Prepping the coolant went pretty smoothly. The weep valve was awesome. I think that helped make the process go fast. Now we're moving on to bleeding brakes. We've topped up the reservoir up here, and we're going to do basically this in the Subaru order. The Subaru order is a little bit weird. On the GDs and the GRs, it is right front, left rear, left front, right rear. You're doing basically an X pattern. The 22 and up, that's actually a C shape. I think it's right front, left rear, right rear, or the other way around. But it basically, as long as you follow the same pattern all the time, you're probably okay. But you know, Subaru says do it this way. Why not? They must say to do it for a reason. So we're just going to bleed the brakes one at a time. Go in there. I'm going to start just basically inside, outside, all around the corner. So we got the AP racing up front, and then in the back we got the Brembos here. We're at the end of the day. At the end of my day, I've done as much damage as I can do in one day. The car, it's on the lift. Brakes are bled. Pads are swapped. Again, I mean, there's nothing really that interesting to see there. We've got the subframe brace on, which has been off for a long time. This is the old carbine ladder brace, and yeah, some of you have asked in the last video, like, does the chassis brake make a difference? Yes, it does. Especially on the GDs, just because the chassis is not as strong. And like, because this is a wagon, I've got the rear strut tire brace. That is probably the one strut tire brace in the Subaru that I think really does make a difference. So getting all the chassis bracing stuff back on. I've got to go drive the car around, wheels and tires. Haven't got them on yet. There's going to take a little bit of finagling there, which I will not bore you with. But you won't see the car with new wheels until the track day video probably. So yeah, man, adventure-filled week. Air oil separator, my takeaways are you need a few things if you're going to install this. Time and a lot of patience, definitely. good vice grips, good angled needle nose pliers, a good buddy. So when you are frustrated and you're like, there's no way this thing could possibly fit or work or move, and you tap them in and they immediately get it to fit and make you look silly, but then it's done and you can move on to the next thing. I'm curious to drive it, and I think the plumbing, as long as everything plays nice, it's just there's a lot of complexity, but as long as everything plays nice, I think this is going to be a perfect solution for us, but got to drive it, find out. So that's where we're at. We're going to get the VB back. There's so much to do to this, I had to skip this because the VB is really going to be an oil change, and that's about it, and just kind of going over everything. So yeah, so that's where we're at. So thanks very much for watching. Thanks for your support as always. Stay tuned for the track video. It's coming up a couple weeks. Man, the time is just flying. It's crazy. And until next time, stay tuned to Flat Irons Tuning.